Gone are the days of June Cleaver or Betty Draper when moms decided the wardrobes for their kids. Today's kids, with heightened sense of independence, want clothes that express their personality. My guest has a sixth sense about what kids like to wear. Welcome Patty Young, fabric and pattern designer, as our guest on Sewing with Nancy. Good to have you here, Patty.
Thank you, Nancy. It's great to be here. Well, Nancy, kids are only kids once, and we can sew clothes that they actually want to wear. For example, the Bloom dress. It's a simple A-line knit dress with big flower appliques. With the right fabric choice, it's versatile enough to be worn casual and special occasion alike.
Sewing Mod Kit style. That's what's next on Sewing with Nancy.
Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, is made possible by Baby Lock, a complete line of sewing, quilting, and embroidery machines and sergers. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Madeira, specializing in embroidery, quilting, and special effect threads, because creativity is never black and white. Koala Studios, fine sewing furniture custom built in America. Clover, makers of sewing, knitting, quilting, and embroidery products for over 25 years. Experience the Clover difference. Amazing designs and Class A needles.
Sewing little girl clothes with knit fabrics are perfect for beginners. And Patty, tell us a little bit about the Bloom dress.
The Bloom dress is a great project to start with. We're going to show you how to install the neck binding. We're going to tell you a little bit about the different kinds of fabrics we're using. We're going to go over doing an applique, setting in a sleeve.
A lot of basics that we'll use throughout this two-part series, and fabrics is the perfect place to start. Sure. And we have a sample of jersey and interlock, and this jersey has a lot of give.
It sure does. It's a 50% stretch, and that's what you want for, you know, pieces like leggings, anything that goes over your elbows or your knees, because once it stretches, it contracts back.
And to have it have retention, you need lycra or spandex involved in it. Right. But not all patterns need that give, because this is 100% cotton and it doesn't have a lot of retention, but it's soft.
It really is, and these are perfect. These are the cotton interlocks, and they're perfect for t-shirts and flowy dresses that don't really need to be tight around the body.
But for kids, if you can get some lycra spandex, oh, it's perfect, because they give with the kids and they go back into shape. And you have cut out the front and back. But the focal point of this dress is the flower bloom, the big applique. And we have two ways to show you how to do this. Very simple. You may have done this in the past.
Yes, the first way we're going to show is using the fusible web that comes in a large sheet. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your paper pattern, and you will, using a regular pen, you will trace onto the paper side of your fusible web, trace both pieces, the petals and the center. Once you have that done, then you can fuse. You just use your iron to fuse onto just a scrap of fabric, and you fuse it onto the wrong side of the fabric, and then you can just start cutting around the outline.
Which we've kind of done.
Like we've done, started here, and we did the same thing with the center. And once everything is cut out, then you just peel off the paper backing, and it's ready to fuse.
Then if you didn't want a lot of weight, perhaps, that the paperback fusible web will give, you can just spot fuse, trace the design on fabric, and then cut it out.
Exactly. We're using another fusible web that comes in a roll just like this, and we just use tiny little pieces on the back of the fabric, and these peel off really easily, and it just creates a softer applique, not so much bulk.
And we've already fused that into place, and now the magic. You do a little cutting.
Yes. So you will zigzag around the center, because that keeps the center nice and in place, and then you just pick a spot anywhere. There's no right or wrong, and then all you do is cut right down the middle. You have two pieces.
And position on your front of the shirt.
So here is your front that you've already cut out, and you will position one half here and the other half down here. And again, there's no right or wrong place to put it, just wherever you feel that it looks nice.
After pressing into place, then you'll do some zigzagging. Here you can see the zigzag, a medium width, about 2.0, a medium length, same length, 2.0, and just zigzag around the edges. And we have one done here already.
Exactly, we zigzagged around the edges. We've only done one side of the flower, so you would do this on the bottom side of your dress.
And then serge or stitch one shoulder seam. And after doing that, it's ready to apply the binding. Sewing knits and sewing kids' clothes of knits are perfect for beginners because we're going to be using the flat construction technique, putting on the binding around the neckline, along the sleeve when it's flat, so that you don't have to sew in circles. And Patty's going to be soon showing you how to put the binding around the neckline. We're just going to talk a little bit about the binding or the ribbing. Patty, you've used self fabric.
I have, and I'm using a fabric that has 50% stretch, which is very important for bindings because you want those to stretch and come back, recover rather quickly. So,
yeah, this is stretching from 2 inches to 3 inches, so it's doubling its length at retention. And the width you've cut here.
it's a 2-inch band.
Cut it, fold it in half, meeting wrong sides together. Then we divide, whether it's the ribbing along the sleeve or around the neckline, we divide it into fours, fold it into 4 halves, put a pin, as I have already on the other sections, so that we've divided it into quarters. And I'm just going to show you this on the sleeve, but I think you get the idea if you've sewn with knits before. If you haven't, you pin the edges together and then match each quarter mark. So you have to stretch or just pin the banding to meet the pin mark, corresponding pin mark on the fabric, and then you're ready to do the sewing. But before we do that, I'm just going to mention, if you don't have a serger, Patty's going to be using a serger, and we have the 4th thread overlock stitch, the basic stitch. A zigzag works perfectly well, just a medium width, medium length zigzag. It has a lot of give, and it can be used as the seam.
Correct, yes.
Now you've done a lot of pinning.
I have, so I like to do this on the neck because it goes around in a
Sure.
circle, and it makes me nervous if I don't put a lot of pins in there that it might slip out of place. So just like Nancy did, we stretched the binding just slightly and then pin. We did the quarter marking and then we pinned in between, and now we're just ready to serge. And then you can begin sewing, serging.
Taking out those pins before you get there. You know, Patty, I don't always use a lot of pins, but I can see the benefit of doing that.
It sure does. For this, I just really liked it because it keeps everything nice in place.
And remember, you can use a zigzag stitch if you'd like to put that on. The fabric's not going to ravel, so just like that, you have the binding placed. It's fast.
It really is. So now we have the neckline right in place, and nothing is puckered or anything, is just perfect.
And to keep that seam allowance down, Patty recommends to do a stitching on the top along that seam line. We've used a double needle or a twin needle, a 3.0 or 4.0 millimeter. Those numbers refer to the distance between the needles. And here's a close-up of me stitching from the top. The bobbin will accommodate both needles and make it work perfect, so that on the wrong side, here's a sample, you can see that the bobbin zigzags between the threads and you have even stitching. It looks very professional. If you can put on the binding, you can set in the sleeve.
The sleeve is easy peasy. So what we do is we set your sleeve cap and the armhole of your garment right sides together, and I like to pin at the beginning of the sleeve, at the end, right in the middle where the shoulder seam is, and then the pattern piece will have single notches in the front and double notches in the back. I place 1 pin in the front and 1 pin in the back. You can always pin in between if it makes you feel better. You know, it always makes me feel better. So I'm just gonna put 1 tiny little pin right here and another one in between, and we are good to go. So.
And it's important to know that, again, we're doing it flat. The underarm seam hasn't been sewn, so you just set in both sleeves flat. Now, while Patty's getting that ready, you'd put the binding on, stitch the binding on the sleeve before you set it in, which makes the finishing so much better. And just keep stretching while Patty's working on this. I'm just going to show you the one sleeve that's been set in. And then the underarm seam has been stitched from the sleeve hem to the garment hem. And then you can double needle the hem. Finish the hem by doing that double needle stitching, and you have a mod style dress finished. The bubble dress is a combo of fancy and whimsy, perfect for a daddy-daughter dance, a school concert, or party. The focus is at the skirt. I know you'll enjoy seeing how the bubble effect, how it's created, and why the fabric always stays poofy. Patty, we have 2 fabrics we're working with, and they're pretty jerseys. And tell our viewers about the dress.
The bubble dress, the top part of it, the bodice, is built identically to the last one we talked about, the bloom dress. You can either attach binding to the sleeves and the neck, or do like as we've done here, where we just turn the edges under and top stitch. So this is very easy to do. We're going to talk about how to build this nice bubble skirt so that your girl can twirl in delight.
And there are 2 fabric pieces, pattern pieces for the skirt. They're quite different in size.
They sure are. The inner skirt, as you see, is much shorter and narrower, and it's cut like a trapezoid, while the outer skirt is just a perfect rectangle, much larger than this is what creates the bubble, because one gets sewn to the other and it bubbles out like that.
And we folded the pieces after sewing the seams in half, placed pins at the quarter mark on both the outer
And the inner
skirts. And then you're going to do some gathering, which you've started to do.
Correct. So what we like to do is do a double stitching, the longest stitch on your machine,
Right.
so that it's easier to gather and the threads don't break as easily. And we grab the 2 bobbin threads and just pull gently and gather as we go. And we want to gather the top edge to match the top edge of your inner skirt. So we're going to gather it quite a bit more than the bottom. On the bottom edge, we're going to gather it to meet the bottom edge of your inner skirt.
And my goodness, we've done that already.
I know.
Imagine that. And we have matching fabrics. So you can see here's the wider edge, and it's been gathered, and those quarter pin marks are still there. So you're going to do a little magic by placing right sides together.
Correct. We're going to insert, we'll leave the inner skirt right side out and insert it inside the outer skirt, just like this.
And match those pin marks.
Match them here and serge or zigzag all the way around that bottom edge to create your bubble.
And here's a close-up of doing that. We're just serging around the edges to meet the 2 together. You're going to have to kind of work a little bit, make sure that fabric is smooth. And after serging that, turn so that you have the right side out. And here's the poofiness.
There's what it looks like. It creates that poofy bubble effect. You want, on the top edges, you want to just baste them together just to keep those layers from shifting before you build the full dress.
And then the top, which I've turned so that you have the wrong side out, we're going to stick the skirt into the top.
We'll insert this in here, and then it's just a matter of aligning your side seams. So find where your side seams are on your skirt, aligning with your side seams on your top, and then everywhere in between. And then you
do another serging.
Serge it around and you're done.
So make a top, make a skirt, put it together, and you have a bubble dress. Show off her bubbly personality with this sweet banded tank top. If you have a bright, bold knit fabric print that you've been saving for a special project, this is the perfect top for that fabric. What I like about this show and these patterns is that once you learn a technique, you can use it in so many other of the garments, like this banded top.
Correct. The bubble part of this top is built the same way as the bubble on the bubble dress. So this top is very easy to build. It only has 4 pattern pieces. There's the shoulder straps, top band, the bubble middle part, and then the bottom band. And it's all made out of stretch jersey fabrics.
And you have the straps here. Couldn't be easier to make these.
Exactly. We cut 2 of these shoulder straps. We fold them right sides together lengthwise and serge or zigzag along one long edge, and then you just turn it inside out, and then you want to make sure you press so that the seam ends up in the back. You can see it here, that the seam is not on the side, but it's on the back.
Then there's the band that's at the top of the top. Top of the top. There must be a better explanation, but we would pin at the markings, the straps, and then the straps scoop around the lower edge, and I'll mark it again, and we'll base those straps along. So right now they're kind of in a funny place. Usually at this point you'd use the same fabric, but we, for contrast, have placed another band of contrasting fabric, and you'd sew around the top edge. Just meet these edges and zip around with a zigzag, or a serger.
Correct.
And we have another sample. Now, Patty, you recommend at this point, as you have done on this sample, is to sew buttons before, not through all the layers.
Exactly. We like to sew them to the outer layer only so that, you know, kids with sensitive skins don't end up with something that feels scratchy against their chest. So that way the lining gets turned in like this, and then it hides the stitching from the buttons.
So you can kind of see what we have going here. Here's the top of the band. You do some pressing. But then the bubble part, same thing.
Exactly. With the bubble part, we're going to gather around the top and the bottom to meet the same width as your bottom band and your top band.
So we have the three components, the top, the middle, and the lower edge. You can do some quarter marks again. Place those pins at the 4 sections and then meet right sides. So we would meet the right side of the middle section to the band. I think you get the idea. You're going to sew in the circle just like we did earlier with the skirt portion of the dress. You sew around the middle, you put right sides together and sew to the top. And let me just place this how it all looked, because that's what we have on our finished top. All sections have been sewn. If we take another quick look at that area, it's gathering, some easing of the pieces together, and then lots of straight stitch of the serger, or I should say 4-thread overlock stitch, or a zigzag. And in a very short period of time, you have an adorable Mod Kids style top. Perfect for laying over her favorite tee, this Mod Kids wardrobe staple is so comfy to wear. Don't be turned away thinking that a V-neck sweater is tricky to make. Patty streamlines the style for super easy sewing. Patty, what I like about your techniques is that if you learn one idea, you can apply it to so many other styles. And here's the top that you just saw, Patty's daughter's top, and this V-neck may seem tricky, but it's not going to be at all. So Patty, you start by working with the shoulder seams.
Correct. The first thing you'll do is attach your 2 front portions to your back bodice at the shoulders, and you could do this either with a serger or with a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine. After you've done that, then it's just a matter of attaching your binding. And we're gonna do this exactly like we've done in the previous parts of the show. And what I've been doing is I stretch the binding slightly, not very much on this one, and do not stretch the bodice at all. So I'm gonna pin the rest of this here. I've got it almost all pinned.
And you mentioned that it kind of depends on the fabric. You may kind of ease it in more with an interlock, less with a fabric that has spandex in it. So you'll get the idea when you start, you know, feeling how it works.
I'm using a jersey here that has 4% spandex, so we don't need to stretch as much because it's got excellent recovery, so we know it's going to lay flat and nice on over your neck. Once we've got it all pinned, then we go to our serger, and you can also do this with the sewing machine and sew that edge on.
And we're just using a 4-thread overlock stitch, the most basic of overlock stitches. Again, it's just a little zigzag stitch, about a 1 width, 2 length, somewhere in there. You'll have to test on each fabric. And Patty's just zipping that along, just sewing that a V neck, but it's not sewn in a V shape. And you have a little extra ribbing, and you just cut that off.
Exactly, whatever you have left at the end, you can trim right off because you're not going to need this. And then you have your finished neck piece.
And here's another sample with the neckline finished. And as before, we use a double needle stitching to top stitch the seam to make it lie flat. And then to create the V-neck, you overlap one piece to the other and baste along the lower edge. And that's the tricky part of it. And you can see it's not tricky at all. The lower portion of the top is met not like this, but you meet it right sides together. And I'm just going to show you, but you'd sew along this edge. Then, as before, you'd set in the sleeve that has the binding done. You'd sew the underarm, and final step would be to hem it with a double needle, and you have another easy knit top, great for little girls. love, friendship, and encouragement. Those are the reasons why the attendees of the Quilt Expo in Madison, Wisconsin donated fabric and spent time sewing quilts to give them away. During this 3-day event, 28 full and queen-size quilts were sewn, and today we're giving them away. With me in the studio is Tom Mooney from the American Red Cross. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Nancy.
And via Skype, you'll welcome Doug Price of Rocky Mountain PBS. Good to see you, Doug.
Great to be with you today, Nancy, and thank you for giving me street cred with my 89-year-old mother who loves your show.
Well, I'm so glad to give you that credit. But what we're going to talk about today are, you've had a lot of disasters in Colorado over the last couple of years. We are recording this in November of 2013, and we were encouraged to donate quilts because of the many needs there are in Colorado.
Right, it's been a remarkable time for us, and in a negative sense, we've had two really enormous fire seasons, and then this unprecedented flood for Colorado that damaged so much of the state. At any one time, almost 20% of the state was affected in the drainages that were there, and it was really disruptive to lives. We had a group of young kids in the studio yesterday who it was bittersweet because they had 4 days off of school from the floods. But they had lost so much, and it will always be a piece of their lives moving forward.
And you can see some of the quilts hanging behind Doug that we were already donated. And Tom, the American Red Cross, well, really doesn't need a lot of explanation. We can't live without the Red Cross.
And we're so thankful for what everybody does to support us, because we rely on the American public and people that make the quilts and others for us to be able to respond in time of need.
And yes, every day, I'm sure, you're filling needs.
We really do. We respond to over 70,000 disasters a year, local and national.
70,000.
70,000. And in our area here alone, just in the Madison area, we have about two a week.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, humbling, isn't it?
It is very humbling.
It's also humbling, Doug, to realize what the people in Lyons, Colorado, where these quilts will be given, what they've gone through, and what they'll strive to get their life back in order.
Well, I know the town of Lyons very well. It's about 4 miles from the home I grew up in with my, well, not literally, my kids grew up in. And the destruction was incredible. And the role that our Red Cross played, Tom, was significant. We were, with the Red Cross, able to raise almost $1.1 million about 48 hours after we understood the magnitude of the flood. And it was really significant to the community as a whole to see how they pulled together. I love the Bill Clinton line that which is wrong with America is made right by that which is right by America. And that to see the community pull together was significant.
Well, behind you are hanging some community-built quilts, community-sewn quilts that were sewn at the Quilt Expo. And Tom, I have one example of the quilts that we're going to be giving you today, and they're, as I said, full to queen size. And tell me, where do you think some of these will be given?
Well, you know, when we respond to a local disaster per se, most of them are fires, usually single-family or multi-unit fires, and many times families have to leave their home without any belongings whatsoever. So when they come back in, it's nice to be able to have something, especially something that has been done by our community, you know, like you said, piece by piece, and it's a very warm reminder of what the community can do to help people.
And Doug, when we spoke the other day, you talked about piece by piece, which I picked up on, but also when I was with the Quilt Expo people and they were sewing these, they were doing this out of the goodness of their heart, and they wanted it to go to needy people. And that's why I have both you, Doug, and you, Tom, here so that they know, yes, that time I spent, it's going to someone important. And we're going to send these, and we're giving you some people to contact. And anything more you'd like to tell us about, Doug?
I just think, Nancy, the quilt is the perfect metaphor for the coming together in a community. You think about the remnants that so often go into a quilt. There's an element of new, there's an element of old, and there's certainly this important aspect of everybody coming together. So that those who created these wonderful works of art, the artisans that contributed their time, I know it's easy to think there are small contributions that are made, but nothing is more important symbolically than coming together to help a community heal. And I think these quilts, the 14 that we have here in the state, will go to people who will see how much the country cares for them and ease the pain that was accrued as a result of this terrible disaster.
Yes, it has. And Tom, you can hand these over.
Yes.
Your volunteers can hand them over. How many volunteers do you have?
In this area here, we have over 200 volunteers. So
Wow.
they're ecstatic about getting such a gift like this. And
Great.
believe me, it'll bring a lot of warmth to a lot of people. Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for being with me. I appreciate it, Tom and Doug. And thank you for watching at home and for donating. For more information, you can go to nancyzeman.com. You can watch this show, rewatch it. You can find instructions on how to make the quilt at our blog, and then also connect to the Red Cross or your local public television station by reading online. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye.
Patty Young has written a book entitled Sewing Mod Kit Style that includes instructions, 20 patterns, and techniques for kids' clothes and accessories featured in this two-part series. The book is $17.99 plus shipping and handling. To order the book, call 800-336-8373 or visit our website at sewingwithnancy.com/2722. Order item number MMBK, Sewing Mod Kit Style. To pay by check or money order, call the number on the screen for details. Visit Nancy's website at nancyzeman.com to see additional episodes, Nancy's blog, and more. Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zeman, has been brought to you by Baby Lock, Madeira Threads, Koala Studios, Clover, Amazing Designs, and Class A Needles. Closed captioning funding provided by Oliso. Sewing with Nancy is a co-production of Nancy Zeman Productions and Wisconsin Public Television.